Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Good evening and welcome to PCKC TV. It is Tuesday night, which is always a fun night for us around here. It means we're going to be talking comics. And I couldn't think of two better folks to be talking comics with on a regular basis, a weekly basis, than Christopher Jackson and William Binderup. Christopher Jackson from our CEO, fearless leader, Planet Comicon Kansas City, William Binderup, who is the owner of Elite Comics here in Kansas City. Guys, how you doing?
Good.
Pretty well tonight.
It's almost new book day, so that's good.
That's always a good day. That's like you get like a Christmas Eve every week. This is pretty cool. It's not too bad.
Get to open all those boxes every week. It's awesome.
So do you want to give us like a little bit of a hint or of what we're going to be talking about? We'll be doing this a little later on the show, but you got some like a highlight or something that you're really looking forward to?
Oh, let's see. For the week, the number one book is
drum roll. Ooh.
Batman Death Metal.
Love it.
That's the Art Germ variant cover there.
Okay. Nice. I'm looking forward to seeing learning a little bit more about that one for sure.
There's only 8 different covers, so.
Chris, what do you got? What do you got going on there? You got some cool stuff over your shoulders there, man.
I like to show a few things I've picked up recently. As many of you know, I'm a collector, a real collector. I've collected comic books for 40 plus years, 50 years. So I found some nice comic-related items this week, and you can see them behind me. These are 2 Third Eye posters from 1971. There is, let me move things out of the way. There is Silver Surfer.
Man.
Wow.
That is beautiful.
Silver Surfer, 1971. These are glow-in-the-dark posters, black light posters.
So you're going to get that black light installed in the basement, right?
I'm going to bring a black light. I need to get a black light so I can show them off.
Yeah.
With a black light next time. Then I picked up an Iron Man.
That's the one right there. Oh,
man, that is dynamite.
That is a cool poster. I'm really happy with these. So those are my 2 purchases this week. So I just got them literally today, and so I'm quite excited. And I'm going to leave them behind me there. They sit very well if I center myself. There you go. There you go. Pretty good.
Not bad, man. Not bad. So, all right. So it's another week we get to talk to a really cool guest here, guys. This one's definitely a favorite of mine. I've known Freddie for a little bit, but not nearly as long as you two have known him. So maybe you can give us a little bit of introduction to our guest this week.
Well, we're very excited to have Freddie Williams II here tonight. Freddie has been a supporter of Planet Comicon for many years. I forget, we'll have to ask Freddie how long he's been coming to the show, but I've known Freddie for a long, long time. And we've appreciated his support throughout. And he is a very active comic book creator, so an artist. So we're going to see some of his latest work.
Awesome. Well, let's bring Freddie in and welcome him. Hey, Freddie.
Hello.
Hey, Freddie.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
In your palatial studio.
It's still light here. We have skylights here that's kind of out of vision. So whenever the sun starts to set, it gets a little gloomier. But right now it feels super bright and very cheerful.
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, not bad, man. Not bad.
Contrast with William's studio there.
I'm William's studio.
No, I like William's studio. I think I might have to buy William a light, though.
You do look very mysterious right now, William.
There's the highlight of the studio there.
Yeah, that was the grand tour. Was that the nickel tour?
I like to keep myself in the shadows. The details are not my strong suit. It's it. You don't need to see the gory details of my face.
Yeah, it's a very much a noir sort of look that he goes for in his Hunker Bunker. So, yeah, Chris and I both have a different variations on the theme for basements. So it's just how it all works out. Well, Freddie, what have you been up to, man? I mean, it's been the world's weirdest 2-3 months now.
Yes, yeah.
So what's life looking like?
We had organized a whole bunch of conventions back to back, and we were going to be doing 6 conventions in 6 weeks. So we were going to be doing Toronto, Hawaii, Texas, 2 shows in Australia, and then come back and immediately do the original dates for Planet Comicon. And while we were in Australia, that's when all the borders basically got locked down there in Australia and here in the US. So we were afraid that we wouldn't be able to re-enter the country. And with a bunch of postponements of flights and different days, our flight got pushed back and stuff. And we were, in quotes, stuck in Australia with friends and stuff. And we were going to the beach every day. It was a very strange dichotomy where it's like throughout the day we'd be at the beach having a great time. Then we'd come back and get on our phones or TV and like see all this very grim, scary sounding stuff. So, but we did get back after I think it was like over 32 hours or something like that with the delays and rescheduled flights of travel time. And then since then, we've been basically hunkered down in the studio, and a whole, every paradigm just about that we thought we has shifted somewhat. So we're still waiting for the ground to kind of settle down and establish a new normal when and if that will ever happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to talk with William week to week about this, seeing it from the retail side of it, and kind of that experience and knowing that people are chomping at the bit. But also, I mean, there's things that were happening in the industry with, and so it's almost like, you could open up the shop. But I mean, William, didn't you have like that week that you were basically just kind of waiting for books, or at least 2 weeks?
And then I think there's another one coming at the end of the month because of the DC switchover and a Marvel week where they weren't going to ship anything. Now, after being open for 5 or 6 weeks, we'll have another week with no stuff.
Yeah. It's
just kind of crazy, but everyone's been, super cool, and everyone still wants to buy stuff. I mean, they have to keep it, for the shop. There's a lot of shops that aren't open or doing curbside. They can't bury those people with product. It'd kill them. So we've got to bide our time. We'll get back to having regular amounts of stuff one of these days.
Yeah, but the release is still there. I mean, people are starting to come back into it. They're starting to find their, find their books that they like and things like that. I mean, some of that stuff is starting to kind of flow back in, right?
Yeah, and they're even finding it's kind of awesome actually on these weeks when there's not that much stuff. They pick up other stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Because if they were like, I spend $50 a week. If there's only 2 books I get, they're like, maybe I'll get a trade, maybe I'll try something new. So it's getting people to try some other stuff because
it's good.
They don't want to, let a week go by without, getting some new comics. So.
Absolutely. And during the show, Freddie, we're going to also have people are probably going to be doing shout outs and stuff like that. So I'm sure we're going to pop some people up on the screen. Maybe maybe not. But it's Freddie. Awesome.
Oh, I thought they said free die.
Oh, wow.
Free die.
Wow.
It's free die.
Very different perspective here, guys, around the horn.
I think Phil is just offering me a very warm welcome and thank you.
There you go. Well, Freddie, I want to dig into some stuff. I mean, there's so much to talk about with your work and everything like that. But as I was saying, kind of when we were getting started, I look at your career and I look at kind of how you've gone about your career, and you've just always shown that you're very much a student of the craft at every step along the way. And it's really interesting to hear you describe that. My question, kind of starting off with some things, is what I want to know is like, when did you first start seeing art as, you described being artistically inclined at a young age, but when did you see art as a potential for a career for you?
Yeah, when I was about 13 or 14, something like that, I found so I grew up in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, and there's a library right next to Arrowhead Middle School, which is where I was going at the time, and I found a collection of Wendy Penny's ElfQuest Book 3. And that there was something about that even now, looking at it, it is ahead of its time. It was drawn in the late 70s. And it was at the time when I was looking at it, it was maybe 1989 or 1988, something like that. If my years are correct, because I'm not real good at that. But anyway, it looked more advanced than even the contemporary stuff at that time that I was reading in the modern day at the time. And to look back and see how old it was shocking to me. It was like this great influence merger of like sort of anime and Disney and more American comics. And the story was beyond anything I had read. So that artistically hit me in a sweet spot that made me feel inspired and want to draw stuff, not necessarily like it, but it just, I don't know, it got my creative juices flowing. And then about a month or so later, me and a group of my friends, we were at a garage sale, and we went up to a place called Stop and Go, which is like a convenience store. And on the spinner rack, I would just happen to be flipping through the comics, and I found a copy of Jim Lee's X-Men 272. And that was during the Extinction Agenda. And the comic, it was like within about a month of the Wendy Penny's ElfQuest. And those are very different types of art styles and books and stuff. But there was something about that time in my life and those books hitting me right then that made me want to try to draw these things for a living. Now, I got really intimidated very quickly because it was so beautifully illustrated and it looked like all the lines were perfect. And I just assumed that when you were a professional artist, you just knew how to draw the right lines the first time. And like there would be no undersketch, because you didn't see an undersketch in these comics. And so later that same year or around that same time, my sister, who's 3 years older than me, we were at high school at the same time at Washington High School. She introduced me to somebody who would become my best friend there at high school, a guy named Tyrone Crockett. And he was the best artist comic book wise and stuff at Washington High School, and 3 years older than me. And he had learned to draw with shapes and stuff with a book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. So he kind of tutored me. Like we would hang out all the time and be drawing stuff and looking at each other's work. And he was giving me pointers, but not in a totally structured environment. We were just doing creative things together. So all of that happened within probably a 4 or 5 month period, I would guess. And that launched me into feeling like, now I could structure out shapes and figure out how to draw things out of my imagination, as well as looking at stuff and trying to replicate or using as reference or whatever. That now I felt like there was a potential for me to become a professional artist. So that was when I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah. And remind me, where'd you grow up again?
I was born in Arkansas, but I have no memories of it. I grew up in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, downtown Kansas City. Okay.
Yeah. So, was there anything, besides, maybe being inspired by those things, did you have any other resources in terms of folks around you that knew about commercial art, or just the career path of commercial art?
Not at all. No. And my, both the art teachers at Washington had no interest or particular respect for comic books as, the art form of it. So if they saw me drawing that stuff, which was all the time, it was very much discouraged. Like they would say, they would try to constructively shift my interest into something that wasn't this comic book thing. And usually with I remember hearing Mr. Lewis, who was also the wrestling coach. He was one of the art teachers. And I remember hearing him say like, to another student who was drawing something that was a little bit more fine art. He said, that's great. And as you're drawing more stuff, bring it in and I'll give you extra credit. And when I heard him say that, I was like, whoa, because I had like this big book bag filled with drawings. And so I brought them out to show them to him. And he said, well, drawings that are not like this, like drawings, other types of drawings.
Oh.
And so what he meant was like, if I was drawing a bowl of fruit, I guess, on my own time, he would have given me extra credit. But
but what you're not saying is that other person has made millions of dollars in the bowls of fruit industry.
They dominate that field of bowls of fruit.
Almost every hotel room in America.
Yes, is drawn by that one kid. But no. So beyond that, I have an aunt who at the time was doing traditional typography. This was at a time when desktop computers were just becoming affordable enough that some companies were switching over to that.
Yep.
So by the time I was like a junior or something, her department had shifted over to being digital. And I remember she brought me this box filled with older drafting materials. It was my first like real art supply. So it was like older Rapidiographs that had probably been used for 10 years or something, but they were still good and she brought me this ultrasonic cleaner thing. It was like this thing that will basically vibrate the ink out of the nibs that you put in there and stuff. I mean, you put a solution in there. All this, I don't know how much those things would have cost me. I wouldn't have had the money to buy them, but she brought them to me because they were being phased out, and a bunch of artboard and stuff that I used. I squandered immediately because I didn't know what I was doing. But no, that's about it. But it inspired in me a desire to try to learn more wherever I could about how to get into the comic book industry, what the ins and outs were, and then once you're in the sort of art form around, you know, storytelling or anatomy, or like there's a shorthand in comic books that exists where you're not just drawing regular people. So I would scour, you know, Wizard magazine sometimes would have like creator like feature, like 2-3 page spreads on, and they would like talk 9/10 of it would be about their current project. And then they would have this one little paragraph or a sentence that would maybe indicate how they draw something. And it's like I was looking for little gems like that, where Jim Lee in one of the Wizard magazines, I think it was issue 8 or something, there was this article he did called Jim Lee, A Bowl of Granola was the name of it. And granola had nothing to do with it. I don't know why they call it that. Maybe he had ate granola that day or something. But in there, he was describing how they didn't have any visual aids, but he described how he would lay out a page on the actual artboard. And then he would trace over his very rough pencil sketches in a non-photo blue, which non-photo blue is a pencil type that I have right here. It basically looks like a blue color pencil, but it is a little bit lighter than a normal blue, and it's not as waxy as a normal color pencil, so that he could then erase the whole page, getting rid of his original pencil graphite sketch and then leaving just this light blue under sketch that he had traced over the top of his own sketches. And finding stuff like that felt like gold. You know, it was before I had access to the internet, or before the internet was really something, you know, that you could use to get a lot of information. So I love, and that has just carried through. Now I listen to podcasts of other people's creative process, or if they have interviews and stuff. I still have that desire to learn more, even though I oftentimes feel like I'm hearing the same stuff. Occasionally you'll just hear some interesting bit that you didn't know before.
Well, I think the interesting thing is that you took that, you know, that sort of traditional process too, and you've literally since then kind of written the book on digital, traditional, hybrid models for production. One of the things you have is the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics. I mean, that's kind of definitive, man. You know, I don't know what to say, except it's like, that's the DC Comics Guide.
Yeah, and I'm not the first person to ever use like digital tools in comics. John Byrne was somebody who would use, I can't remember the name of the 3D modeling program, but he had 3D modeled like different vehicles and like Peter Parker's bachelor pad for when he was drawing I don't even know what book, but and he would basically, at the time, sometimes he would print out his 3D models set and then light box it, and then eventually he would start cutting out the 3D model of like a vehicle or something and pasting it up on his artboard and then inking over the top of it. All that stuff is fascinating to me, but I'm the first one who wrote a book about it, and this is just dealing with using Adobe Photoshop to create either digital roughs, or maybe you take pencils and you digitally ink those pencils. Or that sort of thing. So there's you know, quite a few different ways you can work with digital tools into your workflow. But and I still very much work like that. Now I use also a lot more traditional stuff in the finishing, like ink wash and that type of stuff in the actual execution of the artwork. Yeah.
So I mean, your entry was very much in the commercial realm. More I don't know. I mean, it's all commercial art, I suppose. But I mean, think Hallmark being that sort of entry point into your, work as a production artist, and kind of understanding the fact that you kind of have to show up every day. You got to do the work and you got to do the work that's on your desk. You don't necessarily get to pick and choose, this is the work. What did that time, at Hallmark, that early time sort of working as a production artist, how did that prepare you for what you're doing now?
It was almost like a college experience. I didn't go to college, so I graduated from high school in 1995, and I just assumed I would step out of high school and right into a comic book gig. And of course that didn't happen. And anyone who knows about the history of comics, in '94, there was a big crash, so to speak, of the collector's bubble bursting, or however you would describe it. But it was the reality for a comic book artist was that there were a bunch of professionals whose job had been eliminated. And then now you're a new guy entering into that situation where you have no connections at all. And the people who are actually, have been working with these editors for years and years, they can't even get jobs. So for a few years, I did a whole bunch of different types of jobs, just whatever I could. I worked at a place called Herf Jones, which was a yearbook company. And then I worked at Turnpike, and then I did a bunch of freelance web design and all this stuff. But eventually Kiki, my wife, her aunt had heard that at Hallmark, they were hiring all these PAs, these production artists that would be kind of like a universal artist who, at the time when I got hired, which was in 2000, Hallmark was broken down where they would have like a department just for illustration, another one just for design, another one just for finishing. And finishing is who gets it all together, all the digital files ready for the press. And they wanted to have a bunch of like 100 artists or whatever that they were going to train all at the same time in different shifts or different waves. Actually, they were called flotillas, is what they. I don't know where that word came from. Flotilla.
Typical Hallmark. That's a Hallmarkism, I'm sure.
Very much so. And I was a part of like the second flotilla or something of artists who would basically be a universal artist. They called the PA. Yeah. And I loved it. It was the best 9-to-5 type job I had ever worked. When I entered in, it was late 2000, and I worked there until January of 2007. So I worked there almost 7 years. It was like 6.5 years. And it was the best job I've ever had. That was a 9-to-5 type corporate job. And it prepared me on how to, because I work in licensing the last couple of years that I was working there. So I was working with having a lot of bosses. So you would have like an art director and then your manager, and then there was like different liaisons that would have to deal with DC Comics or Marvel or Lucasfilm or whatever. And so your representation of their characters would have to go through a lot of approval processes. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just can sometimes be you're answering to a lot of masters, so to speak. And so there might be a lot of contradictory or slightly contradictory direction. And that prepared me a lot for all the crossover stuff that I've done more recently in the last 5 years, because you have a lot of people you're trying to make sure you don't make their characters reflect in a poor light or something like that.
Well, you got to honor all the different artists. You got to honor the different worlds that you're kind of playing in, and then there's the business of it, and just understanding all that.
Yeah, but the corporate atmosphere was heavily influenced in a positive way by artistic people. So you were surrounded by even like the type of desk that I have back here. I specifically got that because it was similar to the type of desk that I had at Hallmark, and it has it's like a 1970s sort of cubicle setup. But it, to me, Hallmark felt so creative, and you would see all these different artistic influences when you were walking through the halls or something, that I loved it there. And I still have, some of my best friends that I've ever met, I met there at Hallmark, and a lot about not just the computer programs, but about philosophy and color theory and all that stuff. So,
but then you also run off after that and join the circus.
Yeah, comic books is like the circus. Yeah.
Was it hard to transition to how much art you have to do for a comic compared to like at Hallmark? People I've known that work there is like, I was like responsible for one image a week.
Oh yeah.
And then they go to comics and like, we need 22 pages a month.
Yeah, and multiple images on the page.
It's like astronomically more work.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I had, let me see, because I was still working, I was still exploring, comic book artwork portfolios. I was trying to still create artwork to break into the industry. There is a big difference in the type of work as far as actual image creation, just the sheer volume of it for sure. I haven't had too much trouble with anything like artist block or anything. Like whenever I read a script, the imagery immediately, there's like 3 or 4 angles of each scene that will just pop into my brain immediately. And so as long as I can, usually the way that I work is I'll create a Photoshop document for each page of the comic book, and then I'll put the script just for that page in there, and I'll make sure that the script only takes up part of the document, and then in the margin, I'll sketch very crude, poorly drawn, embarrassing sketches that I hope no one would ever see. They're like shorthand for myself. Like when I read the panel description, just that one of the images, one of the angles, I'll just jot it really quick. And I'll do that for every panel throughout the whole issue. And that initial process of translating from nothing into something to the actual page or the canvas or whatever, is probably the one that's the hardest to do as far as mental power. Like it takes every nook and cranny of my brain to make what I think is a good flow from, of every page throughout the whole book. And then after that, it's very time consuming, but it's more of just execution of, does that hand look too big? Is that guy muscular or too muscular? That sort of thing. And those things it's easier to you have something there in front of you that you can then whittle down or make bigger, instead of coming up with from nothing to something. That is the biggest leap to me.
Now, is that kind of a common process, or is that something that you've kind of borrowed from somebody else, or is that your own sort of thing, that your flow as part of, when you get a script in?
I've seen plenty of people who would get, back in, let's cast our brains back to the 80s when there's no internet and there's no email and stuff, and let's just assume you don't get a fax, you don't have a fax machine. So maybe somebody would send you a Xerox copy of a comic book page, and there would be enough of a margin, or at the bottom of the page there might be a little bit of white area. Plenty of people would sketch a really bad thumbnail as they went in pencil or something. So I definitely didn't create that of just sketching out your very first instinct. As far as the Photoshop stuff and drawing it, there and having it in a layer group that's called Scribbles and stuff like that. Maybe not the first, but I think I'm the first one who wrote about it, because the process that I described is illustrated in the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics. So it was something that nobody showed me how to do that specifically. It just seemed intuitive to do it that way, because you can mess with it more. Working digitally is much more versatile than working on paper, having to erase it and change stuff. You can turn off a layer or take the same layer and blow it up and rotate it, and, so that if you draw a really cool face but it's too big, you can scale it down a little bit. All that stuff is just for hopefully for potency, to save your best drawings and not redraw the same thing 10 times.
Have you run into somebody now that is maybe they didn't even know that you were the one who kind of wrote about that, but that's been their process, and you're like, oh yeah, so and so, I learned how to do this, a long time ago, and you kind of ever chuckle to yourself like, yeah, I kind of, that's kind of what I wrote about, man.
I haven't had that process. Usually I do get probably at least an email a week, but usually more, of people who are either trying to break in, and occasionally actual established professionals who will let me know that they've used something or gleaned something from what I wrote in the book. And even if they don't work exactly that same way, or maybe they use Manga Studio instead of Photoshop, but they work in a similar workflow still, with file construction and the way you set up your folders and stuff. And that's the best kind of feedback I can get. I'm happy if somebody get some information, especially because that book is now 10 years old. That book is 10 years old. It came out in 2009. So it's 11 years old.
I wasn't going to say anything. I saw the screenshots, from of the interface from whatever it was, Photoshop or whatever it was, and I saw this, and I'm like going, wow, that's it dates it a little bit.
The computers were run with hamster wheels, and you poured water into to cool down your computer. I'm just joking, obviously.
And dark mode was just a dream back then, Yeah,
I don't use dark mode. My eyes aren't set up for that. My eyes go crazy whenever I've tried to use dark mode. I was like,
you need to put out a new version of that book.
Yeah, I could. I mean, there's enough that has changed. I think an updated version would probably work. Especially like there's some 3D elements that people can use or have used.
Environments and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think there's right and wrong ways to use them. But it can be, whenever I see an artist who has just started working with 3D models, it stands out because I made all the same mistakes. Like I can immediately see, I'm like, oh, I made all those mistakes. I know I wish that I could consult with them and say, not that I know the right way to do it, but at least avoid these pitfalls and change it for your style or something. But there has been, I think one of the best emails I've ever gotten was Dave Gibbons of Watchmen fame and many other things. He emailed me, apparently it was his birthday, and he had gotten like in early 2009, he had gotten like a preview copy because he worked digital at the time, and either he requested an early copy of it, or maybe they were proofreading it when he came to the offices, but when they were still in New York at the DC offices. But he emailed me and he said, I'm sitting here drinking coffee, eating a slice of my birthday cake, and reading through your book, The DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawn Comics. And he was enjoying it, and he just complimented me how well it was written and how well it read and stuff. That was the best compliment. And it was an early copy of the book, so the book hadn't gone public at the time. It just felt like a great, I don't know, it made me feel wonderful. And also I have to give lots of credit for John Morgan, who was my editor he's now at Penguin Publishing in New York, but he did we worked together a lot. He did a great job at helping me to structure my thoughts and stuff as well. So I don't want to take 100% credit. John was a huge help with it too.
Yeah. So we got, people, jumping onto the stream here. So it says you steadily get emails from people asking for an updated version.
That's my wife, Kiki.
Hi, Kiki. No.
She can ghostwrite it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
You're busy. She can
Careful
could you just write this book? Jeez.
Oh, Kiki does enough. She does enough.
Yeah, Kiki does help me out a lot. She's my full-time business partner, but she also helps a lot with different stages of the artwork, and a lot of different places, that like filling in blacks, scanning in the pages, masking off things for what we call turtle texture. All the turtles have like a freckly look that I do with spatter with like a toothbrush. So she masks off everything that's in the background so that I can do that, and saves an awful lot of time. But she does a ton of stuff, so we work together all day.
I was going to say, last time I was at when we saw you at Planet Comicon last year, the first thing I got was I got to go into the cookie jar when I walked over to your table, which was awesome. So thank you, Kiki, for that. But the other part about it was that you guys work as a team, which is really kind of cool to see. And you were able to, I was able to take my kids and to show them a little bit of process, a slice of process, sitting there at your table about how you do your work, how Kiki helps out and stuff like that. So it's a really kind of a cool thing that to see how you guys work together in that sense.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that she worked as a dental assistant. She worked as a nurse, and she's really good at cake decorating. I'm bringing all that up because she has like a very steady hand. It's very finessed. And so she's great at helping me out because she does art assisting any place that I can find a place for her to. So like if there's a bunch of billows of smoke, like I might establish kind of the look of it on one part of the page and then say, do this type of thing in this scribble and this scribble and this scribble. So she helps a lot on everything I can delegate possibly to her. She's right on a site over here, so that's why I'm laughing.
She's working on pages.
She's working on pages for me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about a little about your style. I think it's let me see if I can pull up something here. What do I want to pull up? Let's pull up this guy. You've worked in a as a production artist. You've worked supporting and doing other stuff, but you've also been in this business long enough to kind of establish your own style. But I've seen everything that you've done that's like wide open pencil and ink work to your ink wash work, which is even more, I think is much more stylized. Do you feel like at this point you've kind of settled into a style? Do you think this is your look, or is this do you still feel like you're evolving as an artist?
I still feel like I'm evolving, and the next project I'm working in will not be in the style. I've only done a single image in it thus far. I mean, it's back to a pen and ink style, but there's still many different types of pen and ink styles even. But I love working in ink wash, and even throughout Batman Ninja Turtles volumes, 1, 2, and 3, if we ever like just looked at the black and white versions of them, just the ink wash, there's an evolution of the amount of detail and my attempt to like go as dark as possible in some spots, and sometimes I went too far and sometimes I didn't go far enough. Sometimes I killed my contrast. There's there was a page in Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 2 that I overworked to the point where it is almost totally flat. And then I had to scan it in because I didn't have time to redraw this page and digitally fix it. And I still feel disappointed that I did it. I loved the page until I killed it. But until I just killed it with gray. But the point, though, is that I'm still looking for different ways. So back when I first started at DC Comics, I was working in this very open line style, and I still like that. It's a simplified line style. Part of it was that the editors just said that that was the type of style that they wanted. It was also out of necessity because I had very tight deadlines with these early projects. And but over the course of that, I've plotted a whole bunch of, I've tried more rendering and different types of rendering and then less rendering throughout the years. And this was probably the biggest style break for me that I developed on the side with like commissions and that sort of thing, where I would work in shades of gray. People liked it. The customers liked it rather. And then I eventually started talking to my editors at DC about using them for, using the ink wash style for different types of pages, either for like a fantasy sequence or for a cover. And then I did a 8-page short story for Conan at Dark Horse that I did in all ink wash. And that was like my first time working in that style and full-fledged sequentials. That became like a prototype eventually for like a year later when I did Batman and Ninja Turtles when I started.
So I mean, you really hadn't done, to do sequential with that particular style. So I mean, you kind of set yourself up like, I think I can do this, and then you kind of sign on to do it, and then like, oh, I got to do it now.
Yeah, on the big. So after I did the first issue of Batman Ninja Turtles, I felt exhausted because there's a lot of like mental endurance that it takes, and I didn't realize that. And then it was like, oh, it's time for issue 2. Right. Then by for issue 4 or something, I felt like, well, I'm on the home stretch. But then by the end of the 6th issue, I felt like I don't know if this is sustainable or not. But eventually, you kind of find your own rhythm and it works.
I was gonna say, I think it's sustainable, man. So this guy,
volume 3.
Yeah, tell me about this. I mean, this just recently came out, right?
Yes, yeah. So Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 3, we've done 3 volumes so far. The 3rd volume just came out in hardcover. Yeah, William's got it there.
There we go, William. Let me see if I.
It's got 6 issues plus a bunch of sketch work, development sketches that I did, and then so in this volume though we did Kevin Eastman. We were lucky enough to land him, the legend Kevin Eastman, co-creator of the Ninja Turtles, to draw some of the what we call the Mirage era turtles, like the black and white turtles, so that there was a crossover with 2 Batmans, so like the current one and then the more Golden Age one, and then 8 Ninja Turtles, so the 4 Mirage Turtles along with the current modern day one. So it's an interesting story. It starts off in a very strange place, then eventually it makes sense and connects with 8 Turtles and 2 Batmans and stuff.
Yeah, look at that.
So there's lots of pages where Kevin Eastman and I are working on the same page, where he's drawn all of the Mirage Turtles, and then I've drawn Batman and the current Turtles and that sort of thing. So it's a real honor to work with him on this stuff.
That's pretty awesome. And of course, he was with us. What was that, Chris? Last year, 2 years ago.
2017 and 19, both.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
he loves the show, by the way. He said really great stuff about Planet Comicon. So
That's really great to hear. I definitely plan to bring him back, and every other year. But now,
plus that's got all these Freddie process cards in the back.
Learn to draw just like Freddie Williams.
Learn to draw better.
I think it's kind of cool that you actually write the book, and a lot of people, once they discover a trick, they're like, well, I'm not telling anybody. I don't need any competition. You're willing to tell people, hey, here's how I do it. You can learn to do it too.
Yeah. Can you draw this turtle?
Yeah. Kiki actually got this for my birthday. This is a book that was this came out in in the 80s. It was a how to draw the Kevin Eastman and Peter. And this is how I learned to draw the turtles. I'm just joking, actually, but I mean, this is a cool book, and it actually has like a bunch of different how-to stuff of like different poses and shapes for their feet and the sort of beaky looking faces at the time and stuff. I'm not putting that down. That's just a different
aesthetic. Yeah.
Yes. And whenever I saw this online, I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. So Kiki got it for me. And these types of head sketches I drew, because I had to kind of learn what the shapes of the Mirage Turtles were so that I could accommodate them in the, the compositions and layouts and stuff for the Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 3. And I drew faces like this. If I had had this book, I wouldn't have had to. I had to So this book, let me actually see what year it came out. 1986.
Yeah.
is a book that Kiki just got me for my birthday, which was a couple weeks ago, and I've been enjoying just flipping through it, and I love seeing this kind of stuff. It's got like breakdown drawings and stuff from like the early Mirage stuff. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's by Kevin. Kevin did that.
Somebody brought it to you in Australia.
Let me see. I think there's a third artist who was basically helping him draw this. So it was Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, but then there was a third artist who actually drew.
Okay.
That's cool.
Rich Buckler.
Rich Buckler. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Rich was a guest at Planet Comicon back around 2005, 6, 7, right around in there.
I love stuff like that.
He did some Iron Man work, things like that back.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I mean, even just the hand studies and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I never saw this book. This would have been really up my alley whenever I was younger, but this is the kind of stuff I really gravitate towards, is just the breaking it down, and How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. If anybody hasn't checked that out, I still think it holds up, even though it's like a 40-year-old book or whatever, 50, I don't know however old it is. But it's still got a lot of strong
34, but who's counting?
Is it 34 years? Okay.
Yeah. Well, so let me fill in a couple of the holes here. So, I mean, from about 2007, 2012, you're exclusive with DC. Mm-hmm. Since 2012, you've been with now everybody, DC, IDW, Dark Horse, Marvel. But in more recent years, you've kind of got this reputation of being the kind of like the mashup master. You know, all these interesting sort of crossovers. You got not just Batman and Ninja Turtles now. You got HeMan and ThunderCats. You got Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. So, for you, I mean, this is kind of like a trip back through childhood, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm really fortunate to get to, that they're letting me get to draw this kind of stuff. And some of the editors who've approached me, because I've drawn like covers for, there was a book called First Strike that was crossing over G.I. Joe with Mask and Transformers and Rom the Space Knight and other stuff from IDW. And just recently I did some covers for the Terminator and Transformers, I think it's Transformers versus the Terminator, I think is how it's titled. And they were asking me, do you feel like you're being typecast as the crossover guy? And I'm like, I mean, I'm happy to be typecast that way. That's like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I love drawing this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I love drawing superheroes still. It's nice to kind of weave in between all of this stuff. I love drawing fantasy, and so far I love drawing all of it.
Well, you're like neck deep in my childhood, man. So here's a great question. I think that, and we could talk to you for hours, Freddie, and please stick around because we're gonna be talking. William's gonna give us the what's gonna be hitting the shelves this week. So definitely want you to kind of comment and chime in. But this is a great question from Pat here. Is there an older comic series that you'd like to see make a comeback or tackle a new project that's outside of your comfort zones? I mean, what's kind of in your sort of dream space? Because you've kind of reached a point in your career where you could do a lot of different things right now.
Thanks. And Pat Giles is one of my best friends, so he's a ringer. A softball question, yeah. But
thank you, Pat.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. I would love to draw an ElfQuest series. I've approached Wendy and Richard Penny, and they were like, we're still kind of doing our own thing about it. But if there was ever a chance, I would love to draw ElfQuest. And I think I could fit but still do something that's not just aping her style. I would love to draw that. But I'd love to draw more Batman and Ninja Turtles. But there's like horror comics. I'm into horror movies. Kiki and I watch horror movies all the time, and especially in October. I would love to draw some horror comics that I haven't really had much of a chance to draw, like really dark, moody stuff. And I would also love to draw some fantasy stuff. And the newest projects I'll be working on, which is a creator-owned book with Tim Seeley, the writer who I worked with on Injustice, Masters of the Universe. He and I are working on a book that has contemporary and fantasy elements that are built into it. I haven't started the project. I'll be starting it in a week or something. So those are the types of things I would like to explore. But even more of the same type of stuff, I would love to keep drawing. I mean, even if I'm just drawing crossover stuff the rest of my life, I'd be happy to do that.
I've been seeing the Turtles versus Mirage Turtles.
Yeah, I'd love
Turtles
to draw
versus Turtles. Leave Batman and HeMan and everyone else out of it. Just give us two versions of Turtles.
Yeah, there we go. A very self-contained crossover that Kevin and I could work together even more. I'd love to do that. Yeah,
and then you could have it with black and white images and color images. The all one color bandana versus the multicolor bandana.
Right.
Yeah, people would buy it. It would be a bestseller just so because people would be confused as to why they all had red bandanas. Just that by itself would make people want to buy it.
Just like asking the Turtles for the same price.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
nice.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, we got Josh here saying Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles need to meet the Transformers. So there you go.
I'd love to draw that.
And we got a shout out from Australia.
Awesome. Yeah, John Samariva. John is an awesome artist he lives in Australia. He was who we were staying with when we almost got stuck in Australia. We would have been stuck with him. So he's one of our close friends, and he's been a guest at Planet Comicon. It was a few years ago. He drew the Batman Ninja Turtles Adventures book, the one that looks a little more animated as far as it looked like Bruce Timm / the Ninja Turtle animated show. He drew that series. He's also drawn the Avengers and stuff. So, but yeah, we travel together, and he's a great guy.
Awesome. Hey, John, thanks for tuning in with us tonight. So, hey, Freddie, it's awesome talking to you. We could do this for hours and hours and hours, and we may do that after this is over because we like to talk even after this is over. But
I'll stick around.
Good. But we're going to turn it over to William here. Let's talk a little bit about it. If you're just joining us for the very first time, first thing I'm going to say is, where the heck have you been? Secondly, I was going to say, secondly, William's going to wonder where the heck you've been. But if you don't know, William Binderup, our owner of Elite Comics here in Kansas City, one of the finest comic purveyors here in town, a good friend and longtime friend of Planet Comicon Kansas City. Every Tuesday night, he gives us a quick rundown of what's going to be coming up and going to be in the stores, on the shelves, ready for our hot hands. And William, what's shaking this week?
Okay, let's start with the biggie, which I mentioned earlier, is Dark Knight's Death Metal, the sequel to Dark Knight Metal.
And what's the team on that?
This is Capullo and Snyder. They're finishing up their Batman, theoretically their Batman run with this, but that's a Art Germ variant cover on that.
Ooh, nice.
So this is going to be the big seller of the week. Besides, also a big seller of the week will be,
of course,
the hardcover.
There you go. The hardcover coming out, available in stores.
Another good one from Image is this A Man Among Ye. I don't know how you can miss out on you can strike out on a lady pirate book.
A lady pirate book.
But also a ginger, so probably bad luck. Pirates never care for the gingers.
My wife is going to be terribly offended by that, but
well, I myself am in the ginger category. So. I never really wanted to be a pirate. Not really a seafarer.
Well, it's not a life for everybody.
It's not the pirate life for me. And this new Boom book is supposed to be really good. I have not read it yet. We just got them a few hours ago, so I haven't had a chance to read it. But Wind, there's obviously 3 covers. That's James Tynion, who's been a guest at Planet at least once, maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's his new creator-owned book. And this is Tom King Strange Adventures. This, I think, is one of the best books coming out on the market today. This book is absolutely dynamite. And it's been a long wait. The number 1 came out about 3 weeks before the close down. Then we had 2 months. Then it's been another month. So here's number 2, if you can remember number 1 from 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, you might have to reread.
Yeah, you probably should just rebuy it. I got extra copies. Don't dig it out. Just buy another one.
Yeah, it's the second copy. That's good.
And then Marvel's got just trades this week. So that's the new HeMan Dawn of X trade is coming out this week. They put up those big, thick volumes, and then they're doing these kind of smaller volumes of all the HeMan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His stuff is probably better in those smaller volumes because it's pretty deep digest on the HeMan.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the HeMan X-Men. Well, HeMan anything, but the X-Men is not a little light read. You got to dig into that one. This one looked cool. It's one of their DC's YA graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
Primer's kind of the smaller format to look more like a manga book. But this is one of the kid ones. It's a young girl that finds some paint that when you get it on you gives you superpowers, which is awesome until she is then hotly pursued by the government agency that wants their paint back.
Of course. Always
As
happens.
they do, constantly.
Yeah.
If you ever get anything from the government, it ain't free. And this is another one. I've been keeping these in stock in the store. We've been having a huge surge in sales of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl.
Yeah.
This book has a really intense following. The single issues don't sell that great, but man, we sell the trades like crazy.
Yeah, and they've been trying to do something with that property in terms of crossover into other mediums too, like from a broadcaster, TV, or streaming or whatever stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that might be part of it. I think it's also they've just started doing more, not trying to put it in the Marvel universe and not trying to put her as a member of the Avengers, but just doing these aimed straight at YA.
Yeah.
And man, they just the Squirrel Girl stuff just sells like crazy. And this one is this is a Dark Horse book. Again, dope. This is really cool. It's the Victor Santos that did that Polar, which is another book in this kind of sideways format.
It's a different format. Can you open that up? I'm just curious to see what the interior looks like.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like super saturated color wise. And they're all like wide panel, like movie shots.
Yeah. Wow, that kind of puts you in some different choices from an art standpoint.
Yeah, there's not a ton of panels. Exactly like this. They like a old 70s movie where they lay the panels over the action. There's one drawing, but then paneled out on top of it. They made a Netflix show of that Polar.
Yeah.
The first book this guy did in this format.
Reminds me of that movie, the old Creep Show, right? When they did that sort of comic book mashup with
here's
cinema.
Something, not to get controversial, but here's a guy with stars and bars with his head blowed off. So
art imitates life. Art imitates life, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing about comics. You can always count on them to be a commentary on what's going on these days.
Yeah, I can't believe how contemporary they are. Oh, and then this is a really great image book.
Ooh, look at that.
It's one of the big oversized art books, oversized hardcovers that are more like the European sized books, which they were really hard to sell for a long time, but people have kind of latched onto them now.
Yeah.
They're enjoying at first it's hard to get comic people to adapt, but this size was not super popular, but people are kind of getting into it.
It's like a coffee table book.
Yeah, I love the catchline on this. Purdy loves two things: sex and robbing banks.
There you go.
There she is. So, yeah, we've got a lot of great stuff this week. Not a lot of Marvel singles. We're still a couple of weeks away from getting our full line of Marvel singles, but still tons of good stuff.
Awesome. Well, hey, let me ask this. Chris, let's talk a little bit about this. I know any updates with regards to, I know people are asking in the feed, so I want to honor that. Any updates with regards to the show and all that sort of stuff from your side?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of information here. Back in March, when we had to postpone the show until August, that was around March 12th, we thought, August, 5 months away, we're going to have this handle on this, and we'll be ready to move forward by August. Well, 3 months down the road, it's not looking quite as stable as we had hoped. So we are still talking with the city and getting information on what would be required to have a large event go forward. Our convention is considered a large event. It's one of the biggest events at Bartle Hall all year long when it goes off as planned. So at the moment, we're still in a holding pattern, waiting to hear whether we met with the convention centers, officials of the convention center and officials of Visit KC, which is the local visitors and convention bureau. And they offered some minimal guidance, but it's really the health department that decides whether events are going to go forward right now. And we really don't have any information from them.
Yeah.
So we are waiting on that. We anticipate by July 1st, we will know.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say to people at this point. We
Well, I
don't know
appreciate
what's
that.
going to happen. I wish I could give better information to all of you. I wish I had more solid information, could give better news, but that's where we stand right now. For those of you who are in the industry, things like Emerald City Comicon in Seattle, they postponed their show from a week after Planet in March to a week or 2 weeks after Planet, maybe. I don't know what. Or no, they were a week before Planet or 2 weeks before Planet in March. They were scheduled to be. And then they moved until a week after the rescheduled show. They were going to be like August 21st, 2nd, and 3rd. And today they announced their cancellation for 2020 altogether.
But I think the thing is, it's different for different areas.
Yes,
I think what we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot of that. Basically, cities and counties are kind of taking their own sort of precautions based off of what's happening there. So Kansas City isn't much different than that. I think I would hope and I would expect that our health officials would be, cautious, I guess.
They have been very reluctant to really talk much about large events.
Yeah.
They're more than willing to have hair salons opening up, restaurants opening up with some restrictions, theaters opening up. But on large events, they have not been very good on guidance.
There's a lot to figure out there for sure.
Yes,
And I think
it's a challenge. I'm not condemning anyone for it. We're all in an unprecedented time. They're facing things they've never faced before. I'm not condemning it at all.
Yeah. I'm
frustrated a bit. I wish we had more information, but I don't.
Yeah.
Well, even if you did have the information, though, then I don't know this at all. But I mean, they may be trying to put the ball into your court. Then you have to decide how much do you want to risk. Even if they said we'll let you do it, but you can only have 10,000 people. You're like, well, can you even?
It's a challenge.
How does it even operate? Or if they say you can do it, but everyone has to stay 6 feet apart, you're like, how? How do you do that?
Does anyone know,
Right.
Freddie, do you know how people could stay 6 feet apart at a comic convention?
I can't imagine. I honestly can't imagine. I mean, unless you handed out those big hamster wheel bubble ball things that person when they walk in, I think that would be the only way. I just want to add something just on a positive note that we do a lot of shows every year, and we do shows across not just the U.S., but international shows and stuff. And Planet Comicon is it's probably the most impressive show and the very well run show, like best run shows. And I have, I'm always telling, that I was the one who was telling like Kevin Eastman how great of a show it is, and John Simariva and David Yarden, who are my friends in Australia who work on A-list titles, and I wanted them to be guests here at the show. And you guys attract like some of the biggest talents as far as, CB Sobolski and like bigwigs at Marvel and DC and stuff. Like one of the reasons I'm saying that is because I've been going to conventions since I'm talking about Kansas conventions, like even at the Jack Ridden Civic Center, which I know you didn't run those, but I'm just saying to see it bloom.
I was there as an exhibitor.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I'm saying that I've seen it bloom from something that was still fun, which was small at the Jack Ridden Civic Center, to something that has been so well built and large that you've created it and turned it into, that I'm impressed, and I think everyone else is excited to go to the show, which is like a wonderful endorsement of Planet Comicon. But I think I'm glad that you're looking at it in a responsible way that you're approaching it. I mean, you can't, like right now, the best data that you have is telling you to be in a holding pattern. That's all you can really convey to people. It's really hard to make plans and to shift such a large event and have it tap dance along with information that's barely trickling in. So I know that you guys are doing the best that you can. I just want to convey like a positive feeling, because I think there's a lot of people who are just eager because they love the show. They just want it to happen because they love going to Planet Comicon,
For sure.
And we want it to happen for ourselves and for the fans, but it's a challenge right now. I mean, when William and I started that show in 1999 in Overland Park, the Trade Center, it was a different show. I don't know what the first year is you came to the show, Freddie. I forget what the first year. You've been to the show for a long time. You were at the Trade Center years ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think 2000, I came, either 2000 or 2001, I came as just an attendee, and then maybe the next year I came as a guest. I can't remember exactly how it worked out, but maybe it was 2 years after that I came I can't remember what it was, but I've been
somewhere around in there. Yeah. Yes, I mean, you've been around. That'd put you at like 17 of our shows or some such thing. So that's awesome. And thank you for that support. But when we started, I mean, William and I, we had 12 or 1,500 attendance that first show, William?
I was thinking back, like we sweated so much those early shows, and now you're like, we could put that together in a weekend.
I know. It was so strange. It's like we look at the room. I found a map from like 2005 a while back, and I showed it to William. And William looks at it and says, "You remember how we agonized over this map?" And now we look at it and we go, we could put that together pretty fast. So,
you could just like, I'll set the room. You get on the phone. We'll have a show next weekend.
Nice.
So yeah, it's it's a challenge, but I appreciate everyone's patience. I thank you for still being interested in the show. I just want to reach out to all the fans that will see this and say thank you for your patience. When we finally have a show, I hope you come out. We don't know exactly when it will be. We hope it can be in August, but I cannot make any promises on that. Yeah. We've had spikes in virtually every state the last few days, and the health officials in Kansas City are known to be cautious. Let me just say that.
So we're just going to have to wait and see for a little while, but I think you're exactly right. Freddie, I think people are just chomping at the bit to get back to something, that feels familiar. So nice note here from John.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Kansas City barbecue does not suck, guys. That's for sure. And one parting sort of note here from Josh saying thank you to Freddie. So he's got some suggestions there, maybe some more matchups.
Yeah, he was saying, by the way, he has to say thank you to me, which thank you for thanking me. And TMNT meets Batman is like a dream come true. All we need now is the Turtles training under the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. to take down Hydra and the Foot.
Wow.
Sign me up for that. Put in a good word for me at Marvel, and maybe we could make that happen.
Awesome. Hey, Freddie, thanks again so much for being with us tonight. We could do this for hours and hours. Hey, Chris, let's talk a little bit about what we got coming up here in the next week or so of some streams and stuff like that. We have a cosplay crafter series is going to continue with HDC fabrication here on Sunday. So our good friends at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop, our good host Jill E. Bean, 2:00 on Sunday with HDC fabrication, and I definitely want to hear more about Mandalorian armor because that would be
awesome helmets.
Yeah, it's the process photos that he's been putting up online are pretty remarkable. And then we will be back here next Tuesday for another Talking Comics.
We're still working on a guest for that. We should have that in time for the newsletter that goes out on Thursday.
Awesome.
So we'll have some information for you. I've got a couple people in mind. Just a matter of waiting to hear back. I do want to mention early on, I want to get some early promotion for a cosplayer that's going to be on our cosplay stream in early July, like July 12th. I don't know the exact date.
Are you dropping spoilers? I'm going to
drop a spoiler here because this is... Kamui Cosplay is going to join us.
Yes.
Milan is going to join us. This is a great treat. She's going to join us from Germany. It's very complicated for her to sit in front of her computer there and have it transmitted here.
It's got to go to space.
Hours of work.
It's got to go to space.
A lot of technical assistance for this to happen. But Kamui is going to join us. And we'll have a lot more information on that as it gets closer.
And if you were with us at Comicon last year, she was amazing. Her panels, her demos, everything. I think she was even judging part of the cosplay contest. I think she was pretty much everywhere in Kansas City.
Well, she and her husband Benny are two of they're one of the top cosplay teams in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just very excited. I'm going to give that a little bit out there. So
all right, spoilers. Joining us. Yeah. You heard it first here, guys. A couple more weeks after that. That'll be sometime after the 4th of July. We'll have Kamui on. So
we'll have more information on it.
Awesome. All right. Hey, William, Chris, thank you so much. It's good to see you guys again this week. Freddie, always a pleasure. I look forward to the next time we get to see each other.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you, Kiki, in the background over there.
Yeah.
And your little cat friend that strolled by.
Yes,
Thank you, John. Summary for the kind words from Australia, and you'll have to come back to Planet Comicon soon. So
absolutely, guys. All right, well, we're gonna I'll cut everybody loose here. We'll stay backstage because we get to chat because that's what we do. It's Tuesday night. We're talking comics. We got to get William, all warmed up and revved up for tomorrow to hold court in over at Elite. And so support your local comic purveyors, and we'll see you guys next week. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
bye-bye.
everyone.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5.